It was meant to be a moment of unity, a chance for the world to see the two brothers who once stood side by side at their mother's funeral, riding together again on the polo field for charity. But instead, this year's Royal Charity Polo Cup has erupted into controversy and heartbreak. At the center of the storm stands Prince Harry, his face flushed with anger, his hands clenched in frustration, after being told in no uncertain terms that he is not welcome at the event that once symbolized family, duty, and camaraderie. The message came not from a faceless royal aide, nor from the palace PR team, but directly from his brother, Prince William. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. This wasn't just a quiet exclusion, whispered behind closed doors. According to insiders, major sponsors of the event issued a stark ultimatum to William. Either bar Harry from attending, or risk losing the financial support that keeps the charity afloat. The sponsors feared Harry's toxic image in the wake of his Netflix deals, his candid memoir, and relentless media storms. But to Harry, this wasn't about donors or reputational risk. This felt like betrayal, another knife in the back from the brother he once trusted above all others. As news of the ban leaked to the press, sources close to Harry describe him pacing angrily through the sprawling Montecito mansion he now calls home, muttering that he's been cut out and thrown to the wolves by his own flesh and blood. How did it come to this? There was a time when the brothers were inseparable. When William and Harry appeared on the polo field together, it wasn't just about sport, it was about family, about showing the world that no matter the scandals and pressures of royal life, they would always have each other. The annual Royal Charity Polo Cup had become their stage to demonstrate that bond. But today, that stage feels like a battlefield. William, now heir to the throne and increasingly seen as the steady hand guiding the monarchy into the future, found himself cornered. According to royal aides, the decision to exclude Harry was not made lightly. William agonized over it for weeks, reportedly torn between loyalty to his brother and duty to protect the institution and the charities that depend on its pristine reputation. Sponsors, some of whom contribute millions annually to causes ranging from children's health to environmental protection, were clear in their warnings. They believed Harry's presence would overshadow the event, drawing media frenzy and potentially alienating donors who disapproved of his public attacks on the royal family. In a private phone call, described by one insider as tense and heartbreaking, William broke the news to Harry. What began as a strained but civil conversation quickly escalated into a bitter exchange. Harry felt humiliated, says one source close to the Sussexes. He told William that banning him was cowardly, that it showed the royal family cared more about money than family. He accused William of letting donors dictate his actions instead of standing up for his own brother. William, in turn, reportedly reminded Harry of the damage done to the monarchy's reputation by his media deals and candid interviews. He argued that as the future king, he had a responsibility to keep the charities and their supporters aligned with the crown's values. The call ended abruptly. Harry hung up, fuming. Back in California, Meghan is said to have been equally outraged. Some reports claim she urged Harry to go public with the snub, framing it as another example of how the royal family has iced them out. Others say Meghan advised her husband to stay quiet for now, knowing that any retaliation might further damage their standing in the eyes of the British public. Meanwhile, in Britain, whispers spread across palace corridors. Courtiers described the situation as another blow to an already fragile relationship. One aide reportedly remarked, "If Harry couldn't be included in something as harmless as a charity polo match, what hope is there for reconciliation?" Public reaction has been swift and divided. On one side are supporters of Harry, who accuse William of cruelty and hypocrisy. They argue that charity should be about helping others, not politics or optics. On the other side are defenders of William, who insist that Harry's actions over the past few years left him no choice. Would you let someone who has attacked your family repeatedly stand beside you in public, smiling as if nothing happened? One commentator asked during a heated TV debate. The story of the Royal Charity Polo Cup 2025 is no longer about polo. It's about two brothers torn apart by duty, pride, and a growing chasm of mistrust. As the date of the event approaches, all eyes are on the Windsor brothers. Will Harry defy the ban and show up anyway, risking an unprecedented public clash? Or will he stay away, nursing his wounds in Montecito, while William plays on alone, but unburdened by scandal? And most of all, is this latest fracture a temporary setback, or the moment the world witnesses the complete and final breakdown of what was once the closest bond in the House of Windsor. This is the story of betrayal, heartbreak, and the high cost of royal duty. Stay with us as we uncover the explosive details behind the headlines, what really happened between William and Harry, why the sponsors turned against the Duke of Sussex, and whether the royal family can ever heal from this public humiliation. Because sometimes, family feuds aren't fought in palaces or courtrooms, but on the quiet green fields of an English polo ground. Harry's fury wasn't just about a polo match. For him, this moment represented something much deeper, something far more painful than being left off a roster. It was about being erased yet again from a world he once called his own. Friends say he felt blindsided, not because he expected everything to go back to normal, but because he believed there were still some sacred family spaces untouched by politics and power. The Royal Charity Polo Cup had always been one of them. Insiders describe Harry as storming from room to room in Montecito, unable to sit still. He reportedly vented to a close friend over the phone, his voice quivering with anger. "This is how they do it," he allegedly said. "First, they pushed me out of my country. Now they're pushing me out of my family traditions. They want me gone for good." For William, the decision was as heavy as the crown he will one day wear. Sources close to the Prince of Wales paint a picture of a man torn in two. On one hand, his brother, the boy he once shared a nursery with, who had stood behind him through life's most brutal moments, the loss of their mother, the glare of public scrutiny, and the immense pressure of duty. On the other, his responsibility as heir, a duty drilled into him since birth: protect the monarchy at all costs. One royal insider explained, William knew this would devastate Harry. He even delayed making the call for weeks because he didn't want to do it. But as king-in-waiting, he has obligations bigger than his personal feelings. When the sponsors started threatening to pull out, he was backed into a corner. The sponsors' concerns weren't entirely unfounded. In recent years, Harry's image in Britain has become deeply polarizing. After stepping back as a senior royal and settling in California with Meghan, he signed lucrative deals with streaming giants, published a memoir packed with family revelations, and gave a series of interviews in which he accused the royal institution of neglect, racism, and cruelty. Some donors reportedly feared that Harry's presence at the polo match would overshadow the event's charitable mission. Instead of photos of galloping horses and smiling beneficiaries, the headlines would focus on whether William and Harry spoke, shook hands, or even made eye contact. For an event intended to celebrate philanthropy, that kind of attention was seen as a PR disaster waiting to happen. Meghan, according to sources close to the couple, was equally dismayed by the ban. To her, this was proof that the royal family would never forgive or forget their decision to step away. One insider claims Meghan told Harry, "They don't want you back, not even for charity. This isn't about donors. This is about control." Meanwhile, palace aides are said to have worked tirelessly behind the scenes to keep the story from leaking. But in the age of social media and relentless tabloids, secrets rarely stay buried. Within days, whispers of the ban reached the press, sparking an avalanche of headlines and public speculation. In Britain, public opinion quickly split down the middle. Some saw Harry as the victim of a ruthless establishment, punished for daring to speak his truth. Others viewed him as a troublemaker, reaping the consequences of his actions. "It's not about punishing Harry," said one royal commentator during a heated panel discussion. "It's about preserving the integrity of an event that's bigger than family politics." William didn't want the focus to be on sibling drama. He wanted the focus to be on the charities. But Harry's supporters weren't buying it. Social media erupted with hashtags like #LetHarryPlay and #FamilyOverSponsors. One tweet, shared thousands of times, read, "If the royals can't even include Harry in a charity polo match, how can they claim they're about family values?" Behind the scenes, the atmosphere in the royal household was described as tense. Courtiers feared that Harry might retaliate publicly, perhaps in another interview or a social media post. Some even speculated he could show up at the event uninvited, forcing a showdown that would make global headlines. For William, the nightmare scenario was clear: a brotherly confrontation on the sidelines of the polo field, cameras flashing, the press circling like vultures. It was a risk he wasn't willing to take. Yet for Harry, being sidelined felt like the ultimate humiliation. The polo field had once been a rare place where he and William could escape the pressures of royal life, where they could laugh and compete like ordinary brothers. Now, even that sanctuary had been taken from him. As the sun sets over Montecito and the royal polo grounds in Windsor are groomed for the big day, the divide between the brothers has never seemed wider. Will Harry remain in California, nursing his resentment in private? Or will he make a bold move to reclaim his place on the field, regardless of the consequences? And more importantly, is there any path left for reconciliation between these two princes, or has William's decision ensured that the rift is now permanent? Stay with us, because this is just the beginning. In the chapters ahead, we'll uncover the unseen forces at play, the sponsors' secret meetings, Meghans' private strategy sessions with Harry, and the royal aide scrambling to hold the monarchy together. What really happened behind palace walls, and how did this charity event turn into the latest battleground for the House of Windsor? Because this isn't just a story about polo. It's a story about family, power, and the price of walking away from a kingdom. The Royal Charity Polo Cup had always been more than just a sporting event. For decades, it was a symbol of prestige, unity, and tradition within the royal family. The green fields of Windsor were not just an arena for elite competition. They were a stage where the monarchy could show its lighter, more human side to the world. Here, kings and princes traded their crowns for riding helmets. And instead of waving from balconies, they galloped under the summer sun, mallets raised high in good-natured rivalry. For Prince William and Prince Harry, the Polo Cup wasn't merely another royal engagement. It was personal. Growing up under the shadow of the monarchy, polo was one of the rare activities where they could escape the suffocating formality of court life. As young boys, they had cheered on their father, then Prince Charles, from the sidelines. Later, as young men, they played together, their brotherly bond on full display before the cameras. Every year, when the Royal Charity Polo Cup rolled around, it seemed to reaffirm the strength of their connection, a strength that even Diana's tragic death could not sever. But this year, in 2025, everything is different. Harry's absence at the upcoming event is not due to a scheduling conflict or a minor misunderstanding. It is deliberate. It is calculated. And it cuts deep. William's decision to exclude his younger brother was no impulsive act. Sources close to the Prince of Wales say he agonized over the choice for weeks. On one side, he was under pressure from sponsors, powerful corporations, and philanthropic giants whose financial contributions keep the royal charity machine alive. On the other, there was his brother, the boy he once promised to protect, now transformed into a man at odds with everything the monarchy stands for. According to palace aides, the warnings from sponsors began arriving quietly at first. A carefully worded email here, a tense phone call there. The message was always the same. Harry's involvement would be a distraction, even a liability. One major donor reportedly told William's team, "This is a charity event. We cannot risk it turning into a media circus about family drama. We support the monarchy, not tabloid scandals." Another sponsor, whose company has been a mainstay of the Polo Cup for over a decade, was more blunt. "If Harry plays, we pull out." The financial stakes were enormous. The Polo Cup has raised millions for causes close to the royal family's heart, from children's hospitals to wildlife conservation. A mass sponsor exodus would be catastrophic, not just for the charities but for William's image as a steady, future king. Still, the idea of banning Harry from the event filled William with dread. He knew it would devastate his brother. He remembered their laughter as boys, racing ponies across the field, their mother Diana watching proudly from the stands. He knew how much this tradition meant to Harry, and how much Harry had already lost since leaving royal life behind. But the warnings kept coming. Behind palace walls, the debate grew heated. Some senior aides advised William to stand firm and refuse to give in to sponsor pressure. "This is about family," one is said to have argued. "The public will forgive a little drama if it means seeing the brothers together again. In fact, they crave it." But others insisted that the risks were too great. They pointed to Harry's Netflix projects, his tell-all memoir, and his repeated criticisms of the monarchy as proof that his presence would overshadow the event's charitable purpose. "The narrative will never be about the children you're helping," one aide warned William. "It'll be about whether or not you and Harry shake hands. That's not the story we want." Caught between two impossible choices, William reportedly spent sleepless nights agonizing over the decision. In the end, he made the call. Not with malice, but with the cold, heavy pragmatism that duty often demands. And then came the phone call. Sources say William chose to deliver the news personally, unwilling to let an aide or a carefully drafted email handle something so delicate. At first, the conversation was cordial, even awkwardly friendly. Harry, surprised but hopeful, believed this might be a step toward reconciliation. But as William began explaining the situation, Harry's mood shifted. "You're telling me I'm not welcome?" Harry allegedly asked, his voice rising. "It's not about being welcome," William replied carefully. "It's about keeping the focus on the charity. The sponsors." "The sponsors?" Harry interrupted, incredulous. "So they get to decide whether I see my own brother?" "It's not like that, Harry. You know how complicated this has become." "No, William. What I know is that you've chosen money and image over family." Again, the call ended abruptly, with Harry hanging up. In California, Meghan was reportedly furious. According to friends, she encouraged Harry to view the ban as proof that the royal family would never accept them back into the fold. "This was never about polo," Meghan is rumored to have told Harry. "This was about control. About making sure you know your place. And your place, to them, is outside the gates." As news of Harry's exclusion leaked to the press, reactions were explosive. Royal watchers speculated endlessly about what this meant for the brothers' relationship. Social media became a battleground, with hashtags like #LetHarryPlay and #TeamWilliam trending simultaneously. For many, the Polo Cup has now become a symbol of the wider rift in the royal family. Can two brothers, raised to uphold the same traditions, find their way back to each other? Or has the distance between Windsor and Montecito grown too vast to bridge? As the day of the event approaches, one thing is clear. This year's Royal Charity Polo Cup will not be remembered for the thundering hooves or the clinking of champagne glasses. It will be remembered as the year the Brotherhood of Princes was tested like never before. And perhaps as the year their bond was broken for good. There was a time when William and Harry were more than just royal brothers. They were inseparable allies navigating the stormy seas of monarchy, media, and family tragedy. From the moment they stepped out, hand in hand, behind their mother's coffin in 1997, the world saw them as a united front. Two young princes forced to grow up too soon, they clung to each other like lifelines in a world that never seemed to grant them peace. But the cracks began to show long before Meghan Markle ever entered Harry's life. Insiders say the seeds of tension were planted in the very roles assigned to them at birth. William, destined to be king, was raised with an unshakable sense of duty and caution. Harry, the so-called spare, grew up with less responsibility but more freedom and more temptation to rebel against a rigid system. They were always different, one former royal aide reflects. William was measured, careful, even as a teenager. Harry was fiery, emotional. He wanted to escape the palace walls. William was content to stay and prepare for his future. Still, their bond remained strong through the years. Whether they were laughing on the ski slopes in Switzerland, serving together in the military, or playing polo side by side for charity, the brothers exuded an easy camaraderie. But everything changed in 2016, when Harry met Meghan. At first, William reportedly welcomed the relationship. He admired Meghan's confidence and how happy she seemed to make his brother. But as their romance accelerated, concerns began to surface. Behind palace doors, William is said to have cautioned Harry against moving too fast, advising him to take the time to really get to know her. Harry, already protective of Meghan and resentful of what he saw as his family's coldness toward her, bristled at the advice. That conversation, according to insiders, marked the beginning of a slow but steady erosion of trust between the brothers. By the time Harry and Meghan announced their decision to step back as senior royals in 2020, the rift was undeniable. William felt blindsided. He reportedly confided in friends that he had put everything on the line to support his brother, only to be repaid with a public bombshell that rocked the monarchy. Harry, for his part, felt abandoned. He believed William, of all people, should have understood his need to protect. It was more than a falling out, says a source close to both brothers. It was heartbreak. They weren't just fighting about royal duties, they were fighting about who they were to each other. Since then, every interaction between the two has been strained, every public appearance scrutinized for the slightest sign of warmth or frostiness. At Prince Philip's funeral in 2021, they were photographed walking together, but insiders claimed the conversation was brief and awkward. At the unveiling of a statue for their mother later that year, their smiles seemed forced, their exchanges perfunctory. And now, in 2025, the gulf between them has never seemed wider. The decision to bar Harry from the Royal Charity Polo Cup is, in many ways, the latest casualty of this ongoing war. For Harry, it's another reminder that he is no longer truly part of the family he grew up in. For William, it's a painful but necessary step to protect the institution he will one day lead. Friends say William agonized over the choice. He doesn't hate Harry, one confidant insists. He misses him, but he can't ignore the damage Harry has done. William believes he's doing what's best for the monarchy and for the charities involved. But Harry sees it differently. To him, this isn't about duty or donors. It's about a brother who has chosen the crown over blood, time and time again. You can't claim to care about family while cutting your own brother out of a charity event, Harry reportedly told a friend after learning of the ban. Some royal watchers believe reconciliation is still possible, that deep down, both men want to find their way back to each other. But others are less optimistic. William and Harry are on two very different paths now, says a veteran royal correspondent. William's path leads to the throne. Harry's leads to California and a new life. Those paths don't intersect anymore. For those who once hoped the brothers would reunite on the polo field, laughing like old times, the reality is heartbreaking. And yet, in moments like this, it's impossible not to wonder, if Diana were alive today, what would she make of her son's fractured relationship? Would she have been able to bridge the divide? Or would the weight of the crown and the scars of the past have pulled them apart regardless? As the Royal Charity Polo Cup draws closer, one thing is certain, this is no longer just a story about two men playing a sport. It's about legacy, loyalty, and the high cost of choosing between family and duty. The warning signs began quietly at first, like faint ripples on the surface of calm water. A discreet email sent to the palace by a longtime sponsor of the Royal Charity Polo Cup. A phone call from a corporate executive, delivered in the measured tones of someone trying to sound polite while issuing a threat. But as the date of the 2025 Royal Charity Polo Cup drew closer, the ripples grew into waves. Sponsors, some of whom had been supporting the event for over a decade, began to express deep unease over rumors that Prince Harry planned to take part in the tournament. According to insiders, these were not idle concerns. Behind the scenes, there was a growing sense among donors that Harry's involvement in the Polo Cup could tarnish the event's reputation and overshadow its charitable mission. One source close to a major donor recalled the words of their CEO during a tense internal meeting. "We're not paying millions to be dragged into royal drama. If Harry shows up, we're out." Simple as that. For William, the heir to the throne and de facto host of the Polo Cup, this was the moment he had dreaded. The sponsors' concerns centered around what they described as Harry's controversial public image. Since stepping back from royal duties in 2020, Harry and Meghan had pursued a series of high-profile media ventures that won them supporters in some circles but drew intense criticism in others. The Netflix documentaries, the Oprah Winfrey interview, the release of Harry's memoir, which contains stinging revelations about life inside the royal family. Each new project seemed to widen the divide between Harry and the institution he once represented. To the sponsors, companies with global reputations to protect, this made Harry a risky figure. Having him there turns the event into a tabloid feeding frenzy, said one donor in an email reportedly sent to the palace. "We support the royal family because of the dignity it represents. We cannot be associated with chaos." Another sponsor, whose name appears on banners and promotional materials at every Polo Cup, was even more direct. "If Harry is part of this year's lineup, we will reconsider our funding for future events. Our board has serious reservations." These warnings placed William in an impossible position. On one hand, he understood the sponsors' concerns. The Royal Charity Polo Cup is more than just a day of sport. It is one of the monarchy's most effective fundraising platforms, drawing wealthy patrons and global attention to causes ranging from children's health to wildlife conservation. Without sponsor support, the charities that rely on the event could suffer. On the other hand, William knew how much the Polo Cup meant to Harry. It wasn't just about riding horses or wielding a mallet. For Harry, the event was tied to memories of family unity, of carefree summer days before duty and scandal pulled them apart. But the sponsors' pressure only intensified. "They came very close to walking away," said one palisade. "They told us, in no uncertain terms, that Harry's presence would jeopardize their future involvement." William didn't want to believe it at first. He wanted to find a way to make it work. But in the end, the risk was too great. Adding to the complexity was the media's relentless focus on Harry and Meghan. Royal aides warned William that if Harry participated, the headlines would be dominated not by the money raised for charity, but by speculation about the brothers' strained relationship. "Will Harry and William shake hands?" the tabloids would ask. Did Meghan attend? Was there tension on the field? For sponsors who craved positive publicity and a dignified royal showcase, the thought of such headlines was unacceptable. To complicate matters further, some insiders believe Meghan herself became a sticking point for certain sponsors. Though she was not expected to play in the Polo Cup, there were whispers she might attend as a spectator, potentially bringing with her the media circus that seemed to follow the Sussexes everywhere. For at least one major sponsor, that was a red line. "It's not about charity anymore," said a frustrated executive. "It's about Harry and Meghan. We can't afford to have our brand caught in the middle of this family feud." By the time William received the final sponsor ultimatum, the pressure had become unbearable. He felt trapped, says a royal insider. On one side was his brother, on the other was the future of the event and the charities it supports. He kept asking himself, am I betraying Harry if I ask him not to come? Or am I betraying the entire purpose of this event if I let him? The decision to exclude Harry came down to pragmatism. For William, it wasn't about punishing his brother. It was about preserving something larger than either of them, the image of the crown and the success of a charitable institution that helps thousands of people each year. But for Harry, the explanation was cold comfort. "Tell me this isn't about the donors," Harry allegedly fumed during his heated phone call with William. "Tell me you're not choosing them over me." William reportedly tried to soothe his brother, explaining the stakes and the impossible position he was in. But Harry wasn't having it. "Donors come and go," he reportedly snapped. "Family doesn't. Or at least it shouldn't." When news of the sponsor's ultimatum leaked to the press, it ignited a firestorm of public opinion. Some sympathized with William's predicament, arguing that he had no choice but to prioritize the charities over personal feelings. Others sided with Harry, seeing him as a victim of an institution that values image and wealth above human connection. "What kind of family bans its own member from charity work?" asked one angry social media user. But defenders of William were equally vocal. "Harry made his bed when he sold his story to Netflix," wrote a royal commentator. "Now he's upset that people don't trust him not to cause a scene. Actions have consequences." In the end, the sponsors got what they wanted. Harry was out. But the cost of their victory may have been higher than they realized. Because while the Polo Cup sponsors succeeded in protecting their brands, they may have dealt a devastating blow to the fragile relationship between two brothers who once stood united against the world. To understand Harry's anger over his exclusion from the Royal Charity Polo Cup, you cannot ignore Meghan Markle's influence. From the moment she entered Harry's life, Meghan became both his closest confidant and the lightning rod for many of the controversies that now swirl around the couple. In the aftermath of the Polo Cup ban, Meghan's role has become the subject of intense speculation. Did she fan the flames of Harry's outrage, encouraging him to view the decision as yet another deliberate humiliation? Or was she, too, wounded by a royal family that seemed determined to keep her and Harry permanently on the outside? Insiders close to the Sussexes claim Meghan was the first person Harry turned to after his tense phone call with William. As he recounted the conversation, pacing the living room of their Montecito mansion, Meghan reportedly listened in silence, her expression darkening with every word. "They've made their position clear," Meghan allegedly told Harry once he finished. "This isn't about polo. This is about control. They can't stand the idea of you showing up and being welcomed." According to friends, Meghan has long believed that the royal family resents her for modernizing Harry and opening his eyes to the emotional toll of his royal duties. In private moments, she's said to have warned Harry that the monarchy would never forgive him for stepping away, and that every interaction with his relatives would be filtered through suspicion and resentment. For Meghan, the Polo Cup ban confirmed her fears. She sees it as proof that Harry is being systematically erased from the family, says one source familiar with the couple's thinking. And she's furious on his behalf. Meghan believes the royals want to punish Harry, not just for leaving, but for daring to speak out. But Meghan's critics see things differently. To them, her influence over Harry has been a corrosive force, widening the gap between the brothers and feeding Harry's sense of alienation. One royal insider speculated that Meghan wouldn't have wanted Harry to attend the Polo Cup anyway, believing it to be an opportunity for the royal family to use him as a photo prop while quietly undermining him behind the scenes. "This isn't about Meghan feeling excluded," the insiders said. "It's about her not trusting the royals to treat Harry with respect. And she's made her feelings clear to him." Others take a more cynical view. "There's an argument to be made that Meghan benefits from Harry staying on the outside," said one veteran royal commentator. "The narrative of Harry as a victim of his own family keeps them relevant in the U.S. It reinforces the brand they've built in California, the brave couple standing up against an outdated institution. Still, even Meghan's harshest detractors acknowledge that she has reason to be wary. From the moment she married into the royal family, Meghan faced an onslaught of negative press coverage. The tabloids dissected her every gesture, painted her as demanding and divisive, and often compared her unfavorably to Kate Middleton. To Meghan, those experiences were not just hurtful, they were traumatic. And she has vowed never to let Harry walk blindly into situations where he might face similar treatment. She's protective of him, says one Hollywood associate of the couple. Sometimes overly so. But it comes from a place of love. Meghan watched Harry struggle in that world, and she doesn't want him to go back. Yet for all her protectiveness, there are moments when Meghan is said to feel the sting of exclusion herself. According to sources, Meghan had no intention of attending the Polo Cup with Harry even if he had been invited. But the idea that her husband could be barred from participating in a tradition he grew up with was deeply upsetting to her. She's hurt by association, the source explains. Every time Harry is shut out, Meghan feels it too. It's like they're saying, "You don't belong here anymore." And that message isn't lost on her. Meghan's defenders argue that the royal family has consistently failed to meet her halfway, treating her as an outsider from day one. In their view, the Polo Cup ban is just the latest example of a monarchy that refuses to modernize or adapt. But within palace walls, some courtiers whisper that Meghan's very presence has become an obstacle to reconciliation. There's no question Meghan has made things more complicated, one aide admitted. She's not the reason for the rift, but her influence over Harry makes it harder for William to reach out. He doesn't know how to separate the brother he loves from the husband Meghan has shaped. For William, Meghan's potential attendance at the Polo Cup, even as a spectator, was another factor in the sponsor's concerns. Some donors reportedly expressed fears that Meghan's presence would turn the event into a media circus, with photographers more interested in catching her reactions than in highlighting the charity work. That was a real worry, a royal insider confirms. If Meghan showed up, the focus would be on her every expression, her every interaction with the other royals. And that's exactly the kind of distraction the sponsors wanted to avoid. The situation left Harry caught in the middle. On one side was his wife, urging him to recognize the ban for what she believed it was. A deliberate attempt to humiliate and marginalize him. On the other side was the brother he still cared for deeply. Even his anger and hurt clouded their relationship. Friends say Harry felt torn but ultimately sided with Meghan's interpretation. He's come to see these decisions through her lens, one longtime acquaintance observes. That's not to say Meghan is manipulating him, but Harry trusts her judgment. He sees her as someone who understands the palace game and refuses to play it. And so, the couple remains in Montecito, thousands of miles from Windsor, watching as yet another royal tradition unfolds without them. To some, Meghan is the villain of this story, the woman who pulled Harry away from his family and deepened the chasm between two brothers. To others, she's the scapegoat, blamed for choices that Harry would have made regardless. But no matter where the truth lies, one fact is undeniable. The Polo Cup ban has only reinforced Meghan's belief that the royal family and their world of traditions will never make space for her or Harry again. And in Harry's eyes, that belief may have solidified into certainty. William had always known that one day the weight of the crown would sit squarely on his shoulders. From the moment he was old enough to understand the word heir, he was groomed for a destiny he had no choice but to accept. Every decision he made, every word he spoke in public, was quietly measured against that inevitable future. But nothing in his training could prepare him for the dilemma he now faced, choosing between his loyalty to his brother and his duty to the monarchy. When news began filtering in from his private secretary about the sponsor's discomfort with Harry's potential attendance at the Royal Charity Polo Cup, William's first instinct was to brush it off. To him, the Polo Cup was not just a prestigious charity event, it was a family tradition. He couldn't imagine excluding Harry, even after all that had passed between them. Yet as the weeks went on, the murmurs from sponsors grew louder. What started as polite suggestions quickly hardened into ultimatums. One of the largest donors, a multinational corporation with ties to multiple royal charities, issued a stark warning. Harry's participation would jeopardize their financial support. They're worried about the optics, a senior aide explained to William during a late-night strategy meeting. It's not just Harry himself, it's what his presence represents. The drama, the tension, the headlines. William was visibly frustrated. This isn't about Harry, he said, running a hand through his hair. It's about the work these charities do. Why does it always have to come back to this circus? But even as he spoke, He knew that in the world he inhabited, perception was everything. One photo of Harry and William standing stiffly side by side, or worse, avoiding each other altogether, would dominate coverage of the Polo Cup. The focus would shift from sick children and conservation projects to speculation about royal family feuds. William found himself caught between two impossible choices. If he invited Harry and the event descended into media frenzy, the charities would suffer. Donors might pull their funding, and the carefully cultivated image of the Polo Cup as a dignified royal affair would be shattered. But if he barred Harry, he risked not only hurting his brother, but also being painted as cold and vindictive by the press. It's lose-lose, one aide admitted grimly. Whatever you do, someone's going to be angry. In private, William wrestled with the emotional weight of the decision. Despite the distance that had grown between them, he still loved Harry. He remembered the younger brother who had made him laugh through the darkest days of their childhood, the boy who had stood by his side as they faced unimaginable grief. But that Harry seemed a lifetime ago. The man Harry had become, a husband, father, and outspoken critic of the institution William was bound to uphold, felt like a stranger. Every public interview, every pointed remark about the firm, felt like a wound William could not quite forgive. He feels betrayed, says a friend of William's. William spent years protecting Harry from the press, shielding him from palace politics. But then Harry turned around and aired the family's dirty laundry to the world. That hurt him more than he lets on. In the end, it was William's sense of duty that tipped the scales. As the heir, he understood that his primary responsibility was not to Harry but to the monarchy and the people it served. The charities depended on the Polo Cup. Their survival could not be jeopardized for the sake of personal reconciliation. But making the decision didn't make it any easier to deliver. The phone call to Harry was one of the hardest conversations William had ever had. He tried to explain the situation rationally, framing it as a pragmatic choice rather than an emotional rejection. But Harry, already wary of the family's motives, was in no mood for careful diplomacy. "You're choosing them over me," Harry reportedly said bitterly. "Again, it's not like that, Harry," William insisted. "This isn't personal. It's about the event. The sponsors." "Don't talk to me about sponsors," Harry snapped. "This isn't about charity. This is about you protecting your image." The call ended badly, leaving William staring at his phone in silence for several long. "He doesn't hate Harry," a royal aide explained. "But he knows he can't save him either." William feels like every time he tries to extend an olive branch, Harry either rejects it or twists it into something else. For William, the Polo Cup represented yet another chapter in a long, painful saga, a reminder that his future as king came with sacrifices, some more personal than he ever imagined. Still, some in William's circle quietly questioned whether he had done the right thing. Was there really no way to include Harry? One confidant wondered aloud. Or has William become so focused on the crown that he's forgotten how to be a brother? As the day of the Polo Cup approaches, William carries on with his royal duties, smiling for cameras and greeting supporters. But behind the poised exterior lies a man wrestling with guilt, anger, and a gnawing question. Did he make the only choice he could, or has he pushed Harry too far to ever come back? In Montecito, California, the sun was just beginning to set over the Santa Ynez Mountains when Harry received the call that would leave him pacing the halls of his sprawling mansion, consumed by an anger he could barely contain. The day had started calmly enough, breakfast with Meghan and the children in the bright, airy kitchen, followed by a morning run along the coastal trails. But as the familiar ringtone chimed on his phone, a sinking feeling settled in his chest. It was William. The conversation began stiffly, with William speaking in the clipped, measured tone Harry had come to dread. He knew that tone. It meant William was about to deliver news wrapped in duty and justification, with all emotion scrubbed out. "Harry," William began, "I wanted to speak to you directly about the Polo Cup." Harry's heart lifted slightly. Was this it? Was this the olive branch he had been hoping for, an invitation to reconnect on the field where they had once laughed and competed like ordinary brothers? But as William's words unfolded, that flicker of hope died. "I've spoken with the sponsors," William said carefully. "They're concerned. They feel your participation might overshadow the event and detract from the charities we're supporting. It's not an easy decision, but for the sake of the Cup's success, it would be better if you didn't take part this year." At first, there was silence on Harry's end. Then a sharp exhale. "You're banning me?" he asked, his voice low and incredulous. "It's not a ban, Harry. It's..." It's exactly that, Harry cut in, his voice rising. You're cutting me out of one of the few family traditions we have left. And for what? Sponsors? Optics? William tried to interject, but Harry was on a roll now, his words tumbling out in a rush of fury and hurt. You've let them dictate how you treat your own brother, Harry snapped. This isn't about charity. This is about you protecting the institution at all costs, even if it means erasing me from your life. The call ended abruptly. For the rest of the evening, Harry stormed through the Montecito mansion, his fists clenching and unclenching as he replayed the conversation in his mind. One moment he felt sadness, the next a white-hot anger that left him restless and unmoored. Meghan, ever the calm in his storms, tried to soothe him. But even her gentle words couldn't break through the wall of betrayal that had slammed down around him. They've never wanted you to succeed, Meghan told him quietly as they sat on the edge of their bed later that night. This isn't just about polo, Harry. This is about reminding you that you don't belong there anymore. Harry nodded, staring blankly at the floor. It's like they're trying to erase me. First from my role, then from my family, and now from my own memories. He thought back to all the years he and William had played in the Polo Cup together, Diana cheering from the sidelines, Charles offering awkward but sincere words of encouragement, the shared laughter and friendly jibes as they galloped across the field. Those days felt like a lifetime ago. Now, in their place was a gaping void, filled with resentment and words left unsaid. Harry's friends say he has been struggling with a growing sense of isolation in Montecito. While he loves Meghan and their children deeply, he misses the camaraderie of his old life, the sense of belonging that came with being part of the royal fold, even with all its pressures. The polo field was one of the few places where he felt free, says a longtime friend of Harry's. It wasn't about cameras or duty. It was about being Harry, not the Duke of Sussex, not the spare, just Harry. To have that taken away hurt him more than he's willing to admit. As the days passed, Harry's anger cooled into a heavy sadness. But beneath the melancholy was a stubborn resolve. They won't have the last word, he reportedly told Meghan. If they think they can freeze me out forever, they're wrong. Some insiders have even speculated that Harry might launch his own charity polo event in California, a move that would be seen by some as defiance and by others as a desperate bid to recreate the sense of purpose he has lost. For now, though, Harry remains in Montecito, watching from afar as William prepares to host the Polo Cup alone. And yet, there is one question that lingers in Harry's mind, gnawing at him in the quiet hours of the night. If William can't find it in his heart to include him in something as harmless as a charity polo match, will there ever be room for him in the royal family again? The moment word leaked that Prince Harry would not be joining his brother at the Royal Charity Polo Cup, the royal machine went into overdrive. Behind the grand facades of Buckingham Palace and Kensington Palace, phones buzzed, aides whispered in hushed tones, and strategy meetings were hastily convened. For the courtiers and advisors tasked with protecting the monarchy's image, this was not just another family squabble. It was a potential PR disaster waiting to explode. At first, the goal was simple: keep the story from reaching the press. Royal advisors are no strangers to managing delicate situations, but even they admitted this one felt like walking a tightrope. The narrative was fraught with risk. If the media got hold of the story too soon, it could spiral into another round of headlines about the War of the Brothers and cast William as a cold, calculating heir willing to sacrifice family for appearances. It's always about perception, said one longtime palace aide. You have to control the narrative before the narrative controls you. Damage control began with a series of quiet phone calls to key media contacts, urging restraint and discretion. Friendly journalists were told that Harry's absence from the Polo Cup was purely logistical and not indicative of any family tension. We tried to frame it as a non-story, admitted one source involved in the media strategy. The idea was to make it sound so boring that no one would want to write about it. But in the age of social media and insatiable tabloid appetites, boring stories rarely stay boring for long. Within days, whispers began appearing in online gossip columns. Did William freeze Harry out of the Polo Cup? One headline teased. Another breathlessly asked, Royal rift worsens as Harry banned from beloved polo tradition? For the palace advisors, this was their worst fear. The problem with Harry and Meghan is that every interaction, or lack of one, gets weaponized, said a senior royal staffer. We could have invited him, and people would say we were using him for good optics. But excluding him? Now it's being spun as us being vindictive. We can't win. To make matters worse, Meghan and Harry's team in California stayed conspicuously silent, refusing to comment on Harry's exclusion. That silence was deafening. Without any official denial or clarification from the Sussexes, speculation ran rampant. Are they planning a counterattack? One palace aide wondered aloud during a tense crisis meeting. Some within the royal household argued for a proactive approach, release a statement emphasizing the charity's needs and the sponsor's preferences, framing William's decision as one of duty and necessity. Others cautioned that any comment would only add fuel to the fire. The minute we say something, it becomes a bigger story, one advisor warned. The best strategy might be to let this blow over. But not everyone agreed. There's a growing perception that William is cold and unfeeling, a younger staffer pointed out. If we don't address this, that image could stick. And it's not fair. He agonized over this decision. Amid the debates, there was another layer of tension brewing, the potential fallout with the sponsors themselves. Though the sponsors had been the catalyst for Harry's exclusion, they were now growing uneasy about their role being exposed. One major donor reportedly called the palace directly, demanding assurance that their name would not be linked to the decision. "We support the monarchy because it's apolitical and above scandal," the donor said. "If we're dragged into family drama, we'll reconsider our relationship." The advisor's challenge was clear. They had to shield William, protect the sponsors, and somehow avoid escalating the feud with Harry, all while the press circled hungrily. As part of their strategy, palace aides began subtly shifting the narrative. Leaks to sympathetic journalists painted William as a reluctant future king forced to make an agonizing choice to safeguard the Polo Cup's charitable mission. "It's about the children, the wildlife, the causes," one source said in a carefully worded briefing. William would have loved to include his brother, but the focus must remain on helping those in need. Meanwhile, within the walls of Montecito, Harry and Meghan's team was holding their own strategy sessions. Though they had not released an official statement, insiders say there were heated discussions about how to respond if the palace tried to spin the story. Meghan believes they should take the high road, a California-based friend of the couple revealed. But Harry is torn. He doesn't want to appear petty, but he also doesn't want William's team to control the story. Some advisors feared Harry might break his silence in an interview or social media post, reigniting public debate. "If Harry goes public, we're back in crisis mode," one royal aide fretted. Every time he speaks, the family's private pain becomes public spectacle. As the Polo Cup drew closer, the atmosphere inside the palace grew increasingly tense. William, though outwardly calm, was said to be deeply troubled by the situation. "He knows how this looks," said a friend. But he also knows he can't keep sacrificing the monarchy's stability for the sake of family harmony. That's the tragedy of it. He's caught in an impossible position. For the royal advisors tasked with preserving the institution's image, there were no easy answers. They could only watch and wait, hoping their carefully crafted narrative would hold, and that Harry's simmering anger wouldn't boil over into another public spectacle. But as one seasoned palace insider remarked, when it comes to Harry and William, nothing stays quiet for long. And so, as the charity event approached, the stage was set for yet another chapter in the ongoing saga of Britain's two princes, one bound by duty, the other driven by emotion, both unable to find their way back to the brotherhood they once shared. The fallout from Harry and Meghan's Netflix deal had been building like a slow-moving storm for years, but for many within the royal circle, the effects hit hardest in the lead-up to the Royal Charity Polo Cup. What seemed, at first, to be a bold new chapter for the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, a multi-million-dollar partnership with one of the world's most influential streaming platforms, quickly turned into a lightning rod for controversy that threatened to engulf even the monarchy's most time-honored traditions. For the sponsors of the Polo Cup, Harry's association with Netflix was more than just a business arrangement. It symbolized the unraveling of the royal mystique. His decision to pull back the curtain on life behind palace walls in highly publicized documentaries and interviews struck at the heart of an institution built on discretion, formality, and a certain carefully cultivated sense of distance. It wasn't just about content, said one executive from a major sponsoring company. It was about trust. Royals aren't supposed to air their grievances to millions of subscribers. When Harry and Meghan's first Netflix series debuted, the couple spoke openly about their struggles with the royal family and the British press. The series was praised by some as brave and vulnerable, but to others, it came across as a calculated attack on an institution that prefers to speak in silence. One royal biographer noted, "The crown has always depended on a delicate balance between visibility and mystery. By lifting the veil, Harry broke that balance. To the public, it was riveting television. To the monarchy, it was betrayal." For William, the impact was both professional and deeply personal. He reportedly felt blindsided by his brother's decision to go public in such a dramatic way. He couldn't understand why Harry didn't come to him first, said a friend of William's. In William's mind, family disputes are to be handled privately. For Harry to take them to Netflix felt like airing dirty laundry on the global stage. This sense of betrayal wasn't limited to William alone. Within the royal family's inner circle, Harry's Netflix projects were viewed as crossing a line that no royal had dared to breach before. But for the sponsors of the Polo Cup, the Netflix deal presented a different, more practical problem: optics. "We're talking about global brands here," explained one PR consultant who works with several of the Polo Cup's backers. "These are companies that spend millions on their image. They don't want to be associated with controversy. They want feel-good photo ops with smiling royals, not questions about family feuds and media battles." The decision to exclude Harry from the Polo Cup wasn't made solely because of his Netflix projects, but multiple insiders confirmed they were a significant factor. "There were discussions about how the media might frame Harry's appearance at the event," said a Palisade. "Would it be charity-focused? Or would it be about Netflix, about the brothers' tension, about Meghan?" The consensus was that the risk was too great. One sponsor reportedly put it more bluntly: "We can't afford to be caught up in the Sussex drama." Harry, for his part, viewed the backlash to his Netflix work as unfair and hypocritical. "Other royals have cooperated with filmmakers and journalists before," he reportedly told a friend. "But because I'm honest about my experiences, suddenly I'm the villain." Those close to Harry say he never intended for his media projects to sever ties with his family. Instead, he saw them as a way to share his side of the story, to explain the pain and pressure that led him and Meghan to leave royal life behind. But that explanation didn't ease the tensions within the palace or among the donors who feared his presence would overshadow the Polo Cup's charitable mission. For Meghan, the Netflix partnership was as much about survival as storytelling. Having stepped back from royal duties, the couple needed to carve out a new identity, a new financial future. They wanted to be free from the palace, but also free to tell their truth, said a Hollywood associate familiar with their strategy. What they didn't anticipate was how much the palace and its allies would push back. Indeed, the pushback was relentless. British tabloids mocked Harry and Meghan as whining millionaires. Royal traditionalists accused them of monetizing their royal connections. Even some of the Polo Cup's most loyal patrons began to question whether Harry still embodied the values of the institution he had left behind. "William's hands were tied," said one palace insider. The sponsors didn't just whisper concerns, they threatened to withdraw funding. And without that funding, the charities suffer. For William, there was no choice. But for Harry, it felt like yet another betrayal in a long line of perceived slights. "They're using my success against me," he reportedly told Meghan. "I stepped back so I don't overshadow them. And now they say I'm too controversial to even play polo." Harry's frustration wasn't just about his exclusion. It was about what the exclusion represented. To him, it was a message loud and clear. "You're not part of the family anymore," said a friend. Not on the balcony at Trooping the Color, not at the Queen's Memorial, and now not even on the polo field. As the Netflix fallout rippled through royal circles, the sponsors, and Harry's own marriage, one thing became clear: there would be no easy way back. For William, protecting the monarchy's image and keeping the Polo Cup scandal-free was paramount. For Harry, it was yet another reminder that every step forward in his new life seemed to push him further away from the brother he once loved. The moment the story of Harry's exclusion from the Royal Charity Polo Cup hit the headlines, the public reaction was electric. Across the UK, the US, and beyond, people seemed to split into two fiercely divided camps: Team William and Team Harry. On one side, William's supporters rallied around the future king. They painted him as a man unfairly burdened with the responsibility of protecting both the monarchy's reputation and the fragile trust of donors. On the other, Harry's loyalists accused the royals of coldness and cruelty, claiming the Polo Cup ban was yet another example of how the institution prioritizes optics over family. Social media platforms became battlegrounds. Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok lit up with heated debates. Hashtags like hashtag Let Harry Play, hashtag Team William, and hashtag Royal Family Drama trended for days. "It's a disgrace," wrote one Harry supporter on Twitter. "How can you preach family values and then ban your own brother from a charity event? William should be ashamed." A William loyalist quickly shot back. "This isn't about family. It's about responsibility." Harry walked away. He made his choice. Actions have consequences. The press didn't help matters. British tabloids splashed dramatic headlines across their front pages. "William freezes out Harry from Polo Cup," screamed one. "Harry snubbed again. Royal rift deepens," claimed another. In the United States, the tone was markedly different. Many American commentators framed the story as yet another instance of the British establishment punishing Harry and Meghan for stepping outside the rigid confines of tradition. "Harry is being treated like an exile," said one prominent U.S. morning show host. "All because he dared to put his wife and children first. What kind of family does that?" In Britain, however, voices on talk radio and television panel shows defended William's decision as pragmatic and necessary. "Let's be honest," one royal correspondent said during a heated debate on a popular BBC program. "Harry and Meghan have repeatedly attacked the institution. Why should the monarchy jeopardize an important charity event by inviting them into the fold? It's not a family picnic. It's a royal engagement." Some callers agreed. "He's not even a working royal anymore," said one listener. "Why should he get to pick and choose when he wants to be part of the family?" William's right to keep the focus on the charities. Others were less sympathetic. "Harry grew up on that polo field," said another caller. "It's cruel to cut him out like this. If Diana were alive, she'd never allow her boys to drift this far apart." That last point, the image of Diana and what she might have thought, became a recurring theme in public discourse. On social media, users posted side-by-side photos of William and Harry as young boys at polo matches and of them today, estranged and living on opposite sides of the world. "Diana must be heartbroken watching this from above," read one viral post. The charity beneficiaries themselves were caught in the crossfire. Some tried to stay neutral, thanking both princes for their past support. But a few patrons privately expressed concern that the controversy could overshadow the event's purpose. "We don't want people to forget why this polo match exists in the first place," said one representative for a children's cancer charity. "It's about raising funds for those in need, not royal family drama." Yet for many, the drama was impossible to ignore. In Montecito, Harry reportedly followed the coverage closely, growing more agitated as he saw his brother's team quietly shaping the narrative. "They're making me out to be the bad guy again," he reportedly told a friend. "All I wanted was to play polo and support the charities. Now I'm painted as some kind of liability." Meghan, meanwhile, was said to be urging Harry to stay calm and avoid making any public statements. She knows the palace is waiting for him to lash out, a California-based associate revealed. If Harry speaks now, they'll accuse him of stirring up drama. Meghan's advice has been to stay quiet and let the public decide for themselves. But not everyone agreed with Meghan's strategy. Some of Harry's friends believed silence would only allow William's narrative to dominate. "Harry's side of the story deserves to be heard," said one longtime confidant. "If he doesn't speak up, people will assume the worst." As tensions simmered online and in print, public opinion polls revealed a generational divide. In the UK, older Britons overwhelmingly sided with William, viewing him as a steady, dutiful future king. Among younger audiences, especially those under 35, Harry enjoyed more support, with many admiring his decision to carve out an independent life in California. Across the Atlantic, Americans were even more sympathetic to Harry. Polls showed a majority believed the royal family had treated him unfairly since his marriage to Meghan, and that William's decision to exclude him from the Polo Cup only reinforced perceptions of royal coldness. In the midst of this media storm, royal advisors reportedly feared the controversy could overshadow the Polo Cup itself. "Every year we work to highlight the incredible work these charities do," said one palace aide. "This year, all anyone can talk about is whether Harry and William will ever reconcile. It's heartbreaking." As the event drew nearer, one question dominated headlines: was there any chance Harry might show up uninvited? Some speculated that he could stage a surprise appearance to force a public reunion with his brother. Others dismissed the idea as unlikely, noting that Harry would never risk further alienating the few family connections he had left. And so, the public debate raged on, with no clear resolution in sight. For supporters of William, This was about duty, dignity, and the careful preservation of a centuries-old institution. For supporters of Harry, it was about love, loyalty, and the painful price of speaking your truth. But for both princes, trapped in a maelstrom of media narratives and public opinion, the simple joy of a summer polo match had been lost forever. In the days following the Royal Charity Polo Cup scandal, while headlines scorched the reputations of both princes and royal advisors scrambled to regain control of the narrative. A quieter but equally calculated game was unfolding behind the gates of Meghan and Harry's Montecito estate. Meghan Markle, once the smiling Duchess applauded for her modern take on royal life, had stepped into a different role altogether, one that many insiders say was deliberate, strategic, and aimed at shaping public perception of the Sussex brand for years to come. To her critics, she was playing the victim. To her supporters, she was defending her family from a cruel and outdated institution. But to those watching closely, Meghan's silence in the face of Harry's Polo Cup exclusion wasn't weakness, it was choreography. Inside the couple's inner circle, the silence was not born of indecision but of precision. Multiple sources close to Meghan revealed that from the moment Harry received William's call, she recognized the strategic weight of what had just happened. She understood instantly that this wasn't just a personal snub, it was a narrative moment, said a Montecito-based media strategist who has worked with public figures involved in high-stakes PR crises. And Meghan is someone who knows how to control a narrative. According to insiders, Meghan's first piece of advice to Harry was simple but firm: do nothing. Don't respond to the palace, don't give a quote to the press, and don't fuel the fire with a social media post. She told him, let them tell the world who they are. We don't need to say a word, one friend recalled. It was a move straight from the playbook of public image warfare. In a world obsessed with gossip and scandal, silence can often speak louder than any press release. And Meghan, who had been vilified by the British press for everything from eating avocados to allegedly feuding with staff, had learned the hard way how words could be twisted. But not everyone in Harry's camp agreed. Some of his longtime friends believed that staying quiet would allow the palace's version of events to dominate the public conversation. They urged Meghan to reconsider, suggesting that the couple issue a joint statement clarifying their side. But Meghan was unmoved. She's not interested in arguing with courtiers or spinning the press, said another source. She's thinking long-term. She wants people to ask why Harry is being erased from his own family traditions. And she knows that when you say nothing, you force others to fill the silence with their own questions. And fill the silence they did. Across television panels and newsrooms, commentators speculated about what Meghan must be feeling behind the scenes. Some imagined her outraged, pacing the garden in disbelief. Others suggested she was quietly thrilled, viewing Harry's exclusion as vindication of everything she had warned him about. But for Meghan, the moment wasn't about anger, it was about shaping the next chapter. Privately, she began meeting with their team to discuss what the fallout from the Polo Cup could mean for future projects. While the couple's Netflix and Spotify deals had already drawn headlines, Meghan was reportedly focused on something more personal, reclaiming the narrative of who she and Harry truly were. She's always believed that their love story, and their truth, was bigger than the institution they walked away from, said a former royal staffer. And now she's using every opportunity to reinforce that belief in the public eye. Indeed, soon after the Polo Cup controversy began dominating headlines, subtle shifts started appearing in the Sussex's media presence. Photos of Meghan with children at local charities began circulating on social platforms. Harry was spotted volunteering at a veterans event in Los Angeles. The messaging was clear. While the royals were embroiled in internal politics, the Sussexes were still doing the work. This carefully curated image stood in stark contrast to what many believed the palace hoped would happen, that Harry and Meghan would appear petulant, reactive, or even vengeful. But Meghan had no intention of feeding that narrative. She understands emotional framing, a Hollywood publicist noted. She knows how to be vulnerable without appearing weak. And she knows when to let silence do the heavy lifting. Yet the strategy wasn't without criticism. Detractors accused Meghan of weaponizing silence, suggesting that her refusal to speak publicly allowed rumors to flourish unchecked. It's a calculated martyrdom, wrote one British columnist. By saying nothing, she gets to control the tone of the conversation without ever participating in it. It's brilliant, if a bit manipulative. Others took a more sympathetic view. She's been burned so many times by the press that she's learned the safest place is off the record, said a royal biographer. You can't fault her for being cautious. especially when every word she says becomes a headline. Back in Montecito, Meghan reportedly continued encouraging Harry to focus on the future, not the Polo Cup. She's telling him, "This isn't about what they took from you. It's about what we're building now," one close friend revealed. But behind Meghan's measured exterior, there were signs that the snub had affected her more deeply than she let on. Friends noted she was quieter than usual in the days following the call from William. "She's good at hiding it, but it hurt her," said someone in their circle. Not just because of what it meant for Harry, but because it was yet another reminder that she'll never be accepted by that world. Even so, Meghan remained committed to the strategy: keep the spotlight on their positive actions, avoid playing into the palace's hands, and allow the public to draw its own conclusions. She's not chasing approval anymore, the same source said. She's building her own story, her own legacy, with or without their acceptance. Whether Meghan's strategy of silence will continue to serve her and Harry in the long run remains to be seen. But one thing is clear: in the complex chessboard of royal politics and public perception, Meghan Markle is no pawn. She's playing to win. And as the Royal Charity Polo Cup comes and goes without Harry on the field, Meghan's quiet maneuvering may prove to be one of the most consequential moves in this family's ever-unfolding drama.